Back again with another video. Hi, lovelings. I just recorded like 12 hours ago, and I'm recording another one because the inspiration just keeps coming. So, hi. I'm gonna set the intention right now. God, please direct my words towards truth and truth only. Thank you. So, what I want to talk about now is kind of where I'm at with Christianity. Let's call this a hot take on Christianity that you have probably never heard before. So, right now, let me put on Do Not Disturb. Right now, our world seems to be going through a massive shift towards Christianity. There are a lot of people who, I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but in what seems to be a reaction to all of the evil and Satanism that's being exposed in the mass media, in pop culture, are running towards Christianity as like a counterforce to that evil. And I think for the most part, people have the right idea. I think people are starting to recognize that there is a war, a spiritual war going on between good and evil. And people really want to be good. People want to be on the side of good. And that's admirable and commendable. And so everything I'm about to say about Christianity from this point forward is said in love because I want the good side to win. However, I think there's a lot more revelation that needs to take place before the good side can actually be powerful enough to pose a threat to evil. Let me rephrase that actually. It's not that we're not powerful enough to pose a threat to evil. I think we could be even more powerful than we are now. But what I see as being a hindrance to good humans stepping into their full power in this spiritual war is an ignorance about what it was Jesus was actually teaching us. So the church seems to expend a lot of energy theorizing and debating about how to love people, how to be Christ-like in an emotional and social way, right? How to be generous, how to be charitable, and all of those things that we tend to associate with Jesus Christ. What I never see is any sort of conversation about how to be Christ-like in terms of the power he had, the power to walk on water, the power to phase shift water into wine, the power to make food and sustenance appear out of thin air, the power to overcome death itself and claim eternal life. That to me is what makes Jesus so special, in addition to his selfless God-tier love for humanity. He was also free, so free that even the so-called laws of physics could not contain him or stifle his power. Why does the church, or maybe I should say specifically the Protestant church, never talk about that part when we talk about how to be Christ-like? Why are Christians not having serious conversations about how to awaken these powers within ourselves? Why are we not talking about why we don't have these powers in the first place? And so normally at this point in the conversation, when I start suggesting to Christians that just focusing on the love of Jesus Christ and not talking about how to recover our spiritual power, I forgot how I started that sentence, but point being, when I get to this part of the conversation, a lot of Christians put up their defenses and say, you're not supposed to just want power. That's so egotistical. And there's a lot of shutting down and dismissing of the conversation around why we can't perform miracles the way Jesus did. So I think that even that very defensiveness and that refusal to talk about power is in itself a trick of the enemy to keep Christians, to keep people who want to be on the side of good in this spiritual war from actually becoming effective spiritual warriors. I think it is not of God to pretend you're so egoless that you don't want to talk about power. I think that is actually a trap of the enemy. And let me tell you why I believe that. Of course, there are a few Bible verses I could pull where Jesus indicates that he not only wants but expects his followers to be able to perform miracles. So I will put those on the screen. But I'll talk about one that I have never personally seen anyone else talk about. This was revealed to me in a recent contemplation of this particular passage. I was thinking about the passage where Jesus walks on water in the middle of a storm. He's walking on the water towards this boat where his disciples are watching him, and Peter calls out and says, "If it's really you, Jesus, tell me to come to you on the water." And then Jesus says, "Okay, come." That right there, that right there, to me, indicates that Jesus has not only no problem with his followers becoming powerful enough to defy the laws of physics and engage their psionic abilities. Not only does he have no problem with it, but he wants us to. If Jesus, who many Christians believe is the Son of God or God incarnate, if Jesus commanded one of his disciples to walk on water, how could it be wrong? How could it be egotistical? How could it be bad for humans, for Christians, for good people to contemplate power and to try to develop these powers for ourselves? You can't have it both ways. This is contradictory. Oh, it's wrong to want power, but Jesus commanded us to have power. Jesus commanded us to exercise our power. And notice that another thing Christians will do will be like, oh, you need to have a good reason before you start developing like telekinesis and stuff like that. Did Jesus stop and ask Peter, like, well, before you can come to me on the water, you need to give me a thesis on why you want to walk on water? No. Very simply, no. That is not what Jesus did. He just said, walk to me. I've written about this so much. I have so many Substack articles right now about how humans will do anything and everything to deflect from the conversation about why we're so disempowered, why we don't do telekinesis, why we don't fly, why we don't, I think we are in a way trauma bonded to our disempowerment. And that is something I will continue to talk about on this channel, so I don't need to go into it right now. I want to continue on this thing about Christianity being so infantile and weak and like proud of that weakness. I think the real problem with the Christian church right now, if I had to choose one thing to complain about the Christian church, it's that Jesus very clearly demonstrated that the way to be a force of good in this world was to perform miracles, healing blind people, healing lame people, healing people with blood disorders, which, by the way, in that story of the time he healed a woman with a blood disorder, it's important to note that he didn't take credit for the healing. He felt a woman touch his robe, and he felt some of his power go into her to heal her. And then he spoke to her and said, "It was your faith that healed you." And analyzing Jesus's miracles from that angle of like him actually putting the power back into the hands of the people who were coming to him for power, that's something I will also talk about in the future, because all of those miracles deserve their own in-depth study from a psionics, from a magicians or alchemists angle. So the problem with the Christian church, in my opinion, is that we were given very clear instructions and examples by Jesus the Christ of how to be effective spiritual warriors, and that involves activating our very real psychic, psionic, and spiritual abilities. And yet, I have yet to see any church seriously host like a seminar or group discussion of, okay, how do we learn how to do energy healings for people? How do we learn how to heal the blind? And so what's especially twisted and perverse about this situation, that Christianity is so far behind on this conversation, is that other spiritual traditions have no problem keeping this conversation alive. Like, look at the New Age. Like, one way that they are attracting people towards them, one way the New Age is attracting people, is by making this stuff so open and easy to talk about. A lot of people have a spiritual yearning to reactivate their power. A lot of people want to explore these things because deep down they know that humans have this massive wellspring of untapped potential that is meant to be realized. It is meant to be activated. That's what we're here for. And they sense this deep down. And the only traditions, New Age is not even really a tradition, the only spaces where they're offered freedom to talk about these things without judgment or condemnation is in the enemy's camp. And I do consider the New Age to be a ploy of the enemy to like mix truth with lies so that people end up in this like twisted maze of confusion. And so I think the first thing the church needs to get clear about is that it's not wrong to have power. In fact, Jesus commanded us to embrace and responsibly use our power. And I am just fed up with disempowered Christians invoking the name of Jesus to do all their work for them. Like, Jesus, get rid of these demons for me. Jesus, do this. Jesus, do that. He gave, or I wouldn't say he even gave us the authority to do these things. He told us to just recognize that we have the authority to cast out demons. So that's another thing. Like, there's so many ways in which modern Christianity encourages this infantile dependence on Jesus when what he was trying so hard to do was to remind us that we have the power. And until we figure that out, until we realize that, there are so many miracles not being performed. There are so many healings not taking place. And for what? Why not? What is our good reason to not be performing miracles in this day and age? So that's something I do admire about the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church. They do keep alive a living record of saints who have activated these powers. Like, there's Padre Pio, the flying saint. There's so many saints that like performed documented miracles, and so they are recognized and unfortunately kind of put on a pedestal in the Catholic Church, which kind of, I think, maybe unwittingly, or maybe this is programming too, leaves people with the impression that only a very special select few of humans get to be powerful. And everyone else just has to like beg them for power and ask them to intercede on our behalf. But I am here to boldly proclaim that we are meant to be powerful. We don't need to have a saint intercede on our behalf. We don't have to have some elaborate theory or justification for being powerful. The world needs us to be powerful. People who don't know how to heal themselves need examples of people who have healed themselves and people who are not afraid to share that free energy with others. So, yeah, I think I have made my point. And until next time, thank you so much for listening, lovelings.